Alrighty, everyone. Brian Porter here. Welcome to the Tonecast, that beautiful guitar intro that you've heard from day one of the Tonecast is actually our next guest coming up here in a few minutes. Jack Fossett's going to be joining us. Very excited to have him on the show, and we've had him a couple times. We had him did a whole show, I think a year and a half ago, and it the file got corrupted or something like that. So we're back. We're back with our new setup on the Tonecast. We're going to have Jack on the show just in a little bit. But I want to talk about our pickup chooser today. This is a form that we're going to include in the link to the show notes. This is a form you can fill out to get some help with your next set of Porter pickups. A lot of you have taken advantage of this form. We get quite a few per week, and we do our best to answer them timely, but sometimes they're long, extensive answers and back and forths, and that's fine. We love talking tone, and we love talking guitars and pickups and kind of upgrading all of that stuff. So that is just my encouragement to you to try that. And this is the first of many interviews for the Tonecast that are coming with our new setup. If you watched our YouTube channel, you've seen us kind of overhauling the setup here in the shop, and we're very excited to now kind of get back into the interviews. So no more delays. Let's jump into my conversation with Jack Fossett. All right, Jack, what's going on? Happy to have you on the show today. How are you, my friend?
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm doing extremely well. In fact, today is my 15th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. You have officially blown the averages out of the water. How does it feel?
Yeah. It feels, I mean, I think it feels pretty good. You know, we take that whole marriage for life thing pretty seriously.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It works out. It works out if you do.
Right. Exactly.
That's awesome. So, I guess catch us up. You've been on the Tonecast before. As we mentioned on some of our different channels, as I mentioned in the show open, we're trying to get more interviews on So what's been up with you musically, and kind of give me the 2-minute version of the latest with Jack Fossett.
All right. Well, everything's been going great. Many people know me from the YouTube channel, which has been growing really steadily. One of the things that I love is also it's never really completely exploded, with crazy numbers, but it's pretty respectable. But I like that my followers are good, engaging people who really like to talk tone. They like to geek out about guitar gear, kind of like I do. They tune in pretty regularly. And so that's really been one of the joys of it is seeing a lot of regular people coming on. And my band is starting to pick up steam now also, which is great because it's funny when you talk about the YouTube thing, a lot of people use all these modern terms, like content creator and all this stuff. And it's maybe younger people do this now, but like I never set out to be a YouTuber or a content creator. I was just a musician looking for other ways to, get noticed and make some money doing it, but it was never anything more than just, I was like, hey, I know a little bit about gear. Maybe I'll throw some videos together, and it kind of grew organically. But, I'm a songwriter and a gigging musician and everything. Just like I need to make multiple trips to Home Depot to finish one project, just like the rest of you.
Yeah. It seems like, looking from the outside and just knowing you and having lots of conversations, it seems like you're doing what you can to kind of scratch many itches and kind of put together many streams of your musicality. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Kind of try and do as much as you can with whatever avenue you can. YouTube was a place where I found people were starting to listen, and that's kind of what we're all looking for, I think, as musicians, is going to a place where people will listen to you.
Exactly. So what about your YouTube channel maybe started getting people to listen and to respond and to comment? Because there's a lot of channels, we'll make videos and sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. And kind of what was
Sure
for you, what was the thing that sort of, okay, I have this like specific voice. I don't want to say calling, but kind of in that sense of like when you sort of like came up with your style, I guess, if you will.
Sure. Well, what really started to get the message across and started to build the channel was I for a long time, I just did straight up demos. And I actually wasn't confident in myself to be able to give any sort of advice on gear. I really would just do tone sample demos. And for a long time, if I did any sort of narration, I literally would just read the blurb of whatever the company put out. And that was it. I wouldn't, there's no personality in any of it. Sometimes they were just totally tone videos with no talking at all. And I don't remember when or why I started, but I decided to put together some videos of mid-level gear that a lot of people use that sometimes doesn't sound as good as we want it to. And I'll give the great example of this is the Fender Blues Junior. I've done a ton of videos of the Fender Blues Junior, and it's a fine little amp, and you can coax some great tones out of it, but it can also just sound like garbage if you don't know what you're doing. And I think it's so now it's not, but for a long time it was so inexpensive and so accessible that so many people had it, but had that same experience. So eventually I just put together a video that was just like, hey, by the way, the Blues Junior, if you dial it in this way, it doesn't sound like crap. And that was when I started to see some of the more serious, views and numbers. And I did a lot of videos of mid-level hollow body guitars, things like Epiphones and Gretches, like the Electromatic series. And I think the big thing about it is there's just such a vaster pool of guitar players who play that gear. And also I was a little late to the game when it came to pedal demos. So it's like by the time I started doing pedal demos, which is most of what my early videos were, I think the pedal demo video market was already oversaturated. Gotcha. And I started feeling bad about that because, you'd get these small builders who would send something out like really hoping that a demo would drive sales. But the fact is that even if it was a great pedal and a great company, there was just too much and people were starting to get tone deaf to it. It would be kind of like, oh, another thing inspired by a tube screamer, yippity doo. Right. And so I just think people were kind of tired of that. And so, but not a lot of people were doing videos that were honestly talking about how to get good tones out of like accessible gear.
Yeah, that's cool. So that became your angle because, like you said, there is a ton of people in that bracket. I don't want to say price point because obviously, it doesn't even mean there's some serious players that play what would be considered non-boutique guitars and things like that. So it's not necessarily like you're pigeonholing to the cheap instruments, but I like what you're doing there because we're similar in the fact that. If you can find a really good playing Epiphone or a really good playing even Squire or Mexican Telecaster and put some pickups in it, then you're kind of, you're so much further down the road in the instrument than even maybe spending something, a lot more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I have this discussion a lot in the comment section and things, but it always comes down to being a good player. That being said, like good gear, I do think there is like a reality to some gear being better than other gear and, certain things that are objectively better. But, obviously, yeah, like a good player can do something great with inexpensive. But the thing about that inexpensive gear is that, again, it's just that there is like you said, there are so many more players interested in it because particularly for someone who's a beginner or an intermediate who wants something a little more serious. But there are tons of guitar players who will reach those levels, maybe not stick with it further, or maybe just kind of be happy at certain. Some people just play for the joy of playing and never, really dive in to being a serious musician. I'm not trying to say that in any sort of condescending way. I think that's great. People kind of just play for the joy of playing and don't particularly care about trying to rewrite technical books or whatnot. But that type of gear is so much more accessible to people who don't really deep dive into the craziness like probably you or I do.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. And I think in general, I'm more curious kind of the YouTube angle, and then we'll get into some other topics kind of on the future episodes that we do with you. But we've kind of had this wave of YouTube. I'm curious your thoughts on this, like the YouTube gear release cycle that we call it. When new product comes out, lately it was the Tone X1. Everyone has to put like game changer in their title, and I'm finding between many people that I've talked to, and just my own observations in certain forums and just looking online, people are getting a little tired of the
Clickbait.
cycle. Yeah, I mean the clickbait, but also just that cycle of like, okay, the pedal drops and your entire YouTube feed is full of this one pedal, and it's almost like you almost get sick of the pedal before you've even tried it in person. Is that fair to say? Like, do you feel that way?
It is totally fair to. You know what? It's the same thing that happened with the Marvel movies. Well, the internet really completely changed so much. I was just going to say changed so much in the gear world. I mean, it really changed everything in, economics and business and marketing. But one of the things that it really changed, and I already started to see this, the couple of NAMM shows that I went to, which were 10 years ago now.
Wow.
I haven't been to the NAMM show in nearly a decade, but even then it was starting to lose steam because of YouTube. And the thing is that, it used to be in the day that when a company was coming out with a new product, that was your point to advertise. It was to go to the NAMM show, do some big release. It would get out to the guitar magazines and outlets and things. And everyone kind of looked forward to that time of year when there would be, all this cool new gear and whatnot. And now with the internet, one of the things that I've been seeing is they don't need that anymore. YouTube is, I think, a bigger than NAMM or guitar magazines ever were. Mm-hmm. So if a company releases a new product, they can just do it whenever, put in, whatever marketing they want, whether it's through reviewers like me or, the big channels like Premier Guitar or whatnot. And so it's just this constant stream. And because of that, I also see companies doing stuff like purposefully changing little things, not really doing anything significant, just so that they can do a big new, and I'm making like quotey fingers right now, big new product launch. Mm-hmm. I saw like Fender was doing that. Fender came out with the, in recent years, they had the American Vintage line forever. They had the American Standard line forever. And within that, they would make little changes here and there. But then, in the past 10 years, they've actively changed the model names and tried to make it this big release. Now it's the American Professional. Now it's the American Professional 2. Now it's the American Original. Now it's the American Vintage 2. And it's like they're really just the same guitar. Like, not that they didn't change anything, but they didn't make any significant changes. It seems to me just like we just need to keep up with this rat race of constantly having a new product. And there's definitely, I think, consumer fatigue with it, because people just start to be like, oh, wow, look, it's another way you're trying to copy what Leo Fender did in 1954.
Yeah. I think you're right on with that. There has just been this general fatigue, and like, this is the way it has to be. And so everyone plays the game. And I think if you don't play the game, or you can't financially play the game, then you feel like you're behind, or you feel like you're inferior. But you're right, like stuff is just being released like in this mad pace, and what a great time, on the positive side of things, what a great time to be a guitar player with all these amazing like even you think about modeling and how far it's come and how it really does suit a need in a good purpose, and how modeling just sucked from the beginning. And now it's right, like it's usable and decent and a good solution for the guitar player. But like we still get people that will call us or come to the shop, or friends. They're, hey, Johnny wants to get into electric guitar. Where should he start? I'm like, I don't even know what to say, because it's just a massive flood of stuff, and it feels like it's still like people are still pretending that it's going to stay at the same clip that it was. And we all know there was the spike during COVID, and now it's more than recorrected itself in the industry. And so I'm just curious of like, what's the breaking point, right? You're seeing it with prices of guitars, right? If you look on Reverb, we did a show about the, map policies and how everyone's kind of, gray area messing with the map policies. Are like, oh, this is a B stock, and it's like, not really. You just opened the box in the factory, and then you sent me a brand new guitar, which I'm not complaining about as a cheapskate looking for good deals, but I also realize how that does hurt the industry. Like, obviously, I'm a manufacturer and I want to sell stuff at the full price. The dealers don't want me discounting stuff, things like that. So I don't know. It's
Well,
like you're a part of this machine, kind of maybe from the other side. So that's why I'm curious of your perspective.
yeah, I honestly think one of the biggest things that's hurting, particularly a lot of smaller manufacturers, is the massive influx and development of import guitars that are all really at least pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
When I started playing, your beginner gear was beginner gear. Like on my first rig was a Squier Affinity Strat and a PV. I want to say it was a PV Rage. It was one of the little like trans tube. It was supposed to sound like a tube amp, but it really didn't. And like that, that was a fine beginner rig. But nowadays, you can actually get a beginner rig that's dirt cheap that was made overseas. And, I certainly question the ethics of how some of that's made considering the price you get it at. But that's probably a tangent for another time.
Right.
But, when you get this dirt cheap gear and like you said with modeling, you get these amplifiers that are $100 to $200 that actually sound really good. They can plug directly into a PA and you can sound like Eddie Van Halen. And it's like, I think that's really, because now you're starting to see stuff like, and I did a big video on this and it actually got a lot of positive responses despite some negative backlash. But that's, I think, why you're starting to see also like Epiphone is starting to do, made in China guitars that are creeping up on $2,000. And I don't know. I don't see this at all as a good thing for the gear industry. That's not an anti-Epiphone thing, by the way. Like I'd love to see Epiphone do more of their classic models and stuff and really dive in. But do you know what I'm kind of going at here?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's
now it's like you're paying for the Gibson Garage to get a name on your guitar.
Right.
And part of it is because they're trying to compete with these good guitars that are coming in from overseas for super cheap. And it's like you look on Amazon and things, and my buddy Steve Sterlacci did a big video on the Firefly guitars, which are now this weird like legendary thing. But it's so hard to follow too, because every time you turn your head, it's like, oh wow, look, here's another $75 guitar that can sound like $1 million. And I, so I know what you mean when people are like, where do I start? I'm like, I don't even know.
Yeah, yeah, and we have this weird, burden that we carry. I joke it's not a burden. We have to buy guitars for the shop, so it's a good thing, and it's a fun thing. But we have to find this balance of, I try to go really cheap sometimes because I'm like, man, I've got to have all these different, at least something representative of each pickup type. I've got to have, all these things, but. If I go, like I bought some Harley Bentons on a B stock thing and they were absolutely horrible. I've played some okay Harley Bentons, but the ones I got were just trash. And I didn't even spend, I think I maybe spent $150 a piece on them, but I feel like I wasted my money, but
I'm saying that, man. The Harley Benton are dedicated players. You may want to strike this from the video.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've played some okay ones. I really have, and that's kind of why I went for it. But then it was like, we've tried to figure out this balance. So we've got a S2 McCarty 594. So kind of, USA PRS, but not like, not your uncle's 10 top PRS kind of thing. And that completely scratches the itch and in quality and something that represents, a solid guitar. Because sometimes we'd have people come into the shop and they're like, yeah, I can't keep this guitar in tune, so I don't even care about the pickups. And you're like, oh, but I don't want to have like, I don't want to have like $62,000 guitars in here either. I need to kind of find that balance. And so I think you're right. Like stuff is getting better and better. And you're like, man, this is great because now, in many times when you find that good deal on the guitar, you feel like you saved money, right? You're like, oh, well, I got an SE PRS instead of a USA one, and it does what I need it to do. Maybe it's not exactly perfect, but it gets me, it gets me 85% of the way there, and I'm good with that.
Sure. No, and there's an interesting dynamic. On the one hand, I'm really thrilled that people who are trying it out or people who just, like are struggling financially, can get their hands on really good gear that they can be proud of and play. I think that's in general a good thing. And yet at the same time, there's a negative side to it, which is that building a musical instrument for, centuries, millennia even, it was a fine trade that required incredible dedication. And you guys know from like putting effort into, learning about the craft of building pickups and kind of a similar, and of course you build guitars. You guys know what you put into that, what you put into learning. And then when it's like, well, now this, great guitar can come out of a machine from somewhere that somebody can get for a couple $100. Even though it's great that players can get access to good gear, it hurts people who are really trying to be, fine craftsmen of good musical instruments. There are probably, I shouldn't say probably, there are definitely great luthiers out there, or pickup makers or pedal makers or whatnot, who really put a ton of time and dedication in. And with the way that business goes, they can't afford to let it go for a cheap price, or else they're just going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
But then their sales are going to be badly hurt by all this cheap gear. So I don't know, there's just so many sides to it. It's just like I see a lot of great guitar builders where, I'm just like, wow, I would just love that. And I'm like, but I can't afford a guitar like that. And I can't justify that price when I can get something for less expensive that I know will be really good.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is a danger, as you've seen the guitar prices just skyrocket in the last few years. I mean, there's some, Fender Mexico, guitars that are in the teens now, and the upper teens.
Oh,
and
sure. Yeah.
It's like, man, where do we, what happened,
Right. And like, and now I know obviously inflation is part of that, but doesn't account for it entirely. There's this kind of crazy gap that's growing where the big companies' prices are going higher. But again, then these other guitars that are coming in from overseas are coming in at sort of crazy prices. And I'm just like, what? It's from a marketing perspective, it's really bizarre and kind of fascinating at the same time to watch this happening. But I don't, like I said, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't think it's ultimately going to be a good thing. It just seems like it's not sustainable at the pace that it's going right now, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's already been a breaking point, and no one's talking about it. I think that's the truth. Is we've been significantly slower since August of last year, and we're not an outlier there. There's been some serious companies that are having some struggles trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we, do we raise our prices because everything's gone up? I don't want to raise them too much,
right.
But I'm not going to make a $900 humbucker set, which some companies do. It's like, I've got to figure out what that looks like, kind of in conjunction with everything. And so I think, maybe as we close up here, and where do you think the future of kind of YouTube and the guitar gear industry is heading? Because there's going to be more. It's kind of like it's the small aquarium, and there's only so much food kind of thing, and so everyone's trying to get their piece. So kind of where do you see it heading from your perspective?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. And like I said, one of the things that I am concerned about is just that it's not sustainable. Something needs to come in and shake it all up. And I don't know what that's going to be. Yeah, that is a really good question, and you actually have me at a loss. I mean, for me, from a gear perspective, so I'll tell you, and well, like we kind of touched on this, and I saw you made a post about this, but like one of the things that I really don't like the way it's going, and I've had to play this game a little bit, which I'll explain myself here, but it's the clickbait thing.
Right.
I hate clickbait. I really do. Particularly the ones I really can't take the ones where. and I kind of refuse to do this to a certain point, but where, the guitar player has themselves in the thumbnail making some of like, I can't believe they're doing this.
Yeah.
And they have like their hand over their mouth with wide eyes or something.
Can you believe they
And
put 9s on this guitar instead of 10s?
Right.
But
the thing is that is what's driving views. So like, I did I remember I mentioned like the Blues Junior. Well, I just did another video of the Blues Junior. And it was really just like I had never dialed it in a way where I cut the mids, and I thought it sounded really good. So I thought, oh, I'll do a video. My followers like Blues Junior stuff, so I'll do a video about how cutting the mids can make it sound really good. And I was trying to think about like, how do I do an engaging thumbnail that will get people to click on it? So I went clickbait, and it got astronomically better views than anything that I've ever done before. And I don't like doing that. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't like doing that, but it's from a YouTube creator perspective, it's kind of a survival technique at this point, because there are so many videos out there that you need to, the way that I'm able to, I don't want to say justify it, maybe rationalize it, is that the video has good content. I always think like, as long as I'm not like trying to suck someone into a waste of their time, then, put whatever cover on the book will get them to read it. And I usually people say like, you can't judge a book by its cover, but a good cover is going to make people read it.
Yeah.
And so again, that's kind of like, it's a game that I think as content creators, which is also a term I hate, but as content creators, it's just a game you have to play in order to keep seeing your numbers go up.
Yeah,
I guess with the amount of time the time and effort and energy and gear, that you invest in kind of like making a competitive YouTube video, like you need to see it do well. It's not just about like, hey, I want my video to get views. It's like, no, there's a financial side to this, and there's a, Brian, you and I both have big families, Brian. You know how much we're spending on groceries nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
so
definitely,
I got to be trying to make
a really nice guitar a month on groceries. So,
more than that even. I need to make it as successful as possible, which means like, hey, I got to do some clickbait things here. And there's only kind of there's still a line for me of like, I won't do this. And for me, it's the ridiculous faces. But I know, when people say like, I knew exactly what you were talking about when you were like, this new pedal came out, total game changer.
Yeah.
And it does create that fatigue, because it's just like, you just look at it and you can't help but be like, yeah, it's not a game changer. I don't even care if it's good anymore. I don't want to see this. Stop it. Stop hitting me over the head with this stuff. Like I get it from that side too. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I really don't. I've got to need to just start doing reaction videos and, skip out on this whole guitar thing.
Right.
I'll just do like a reaction video to a new Taylor Swift music video and get like 6 billion views in a day.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, to an extent, we're all trying to figure out the game, right? Like it is a game, and I need to put more reels on my Instagram. I need to put more faces on my Instagram.
Yeah.
I need to put faces on YouTube thumbnails. I need to do this, blah blah blah.
And you need to constantly keep up with the changes too.
Yeah.
That was one. It was just like, Instagram. My Instagram was doing great for a long time, and then they switched it over to Reels. And I was like, what? And because they were competing with TikTok. Mm-hmm. And so now you need to do it this way and to hit the algorithm right. And then as soon as you figure out doing it that way, and they're like, well, now you got to do it this way. Now you have to add in the subscriptions and the fee. And I'm just like, oh man, I'm too old for this.
Yeah. It's hard because
I'm a first generation millennial, which means I'm really like a jaded Gen Xer.
Yeah, and what a time, like you said back earlier in the interview, it's kind of like this. These are the ways that you used to consume a guitar content. Like Marco and I were talking about, the Sweetwater catalog and the Musician's Friend catalog.
Oh, I loved the Sweetwater catalog.
Yeah, right. Would you get? And I was the Musician's Friend guy, right? It's like, oh my gosh, look at this new thing. And he was talking about how you would circle, what on that page that you wanted.
Yeah.
And
you get out your pen and you go through and you desperately hope someone with a lot of money will pick this up and be like, you know what? I like this guy. He deserves all this gear.
Poor Jack. He needs a new Fender Deluxe Reverb and
exactly.
donate to the cause kind of thing. Well, that's kind of like I bought my my first real Strat in '98 out of the musician friend catalog. It was an American Standard I still have in the shop, and it was $850 at the time in '98. And
Yeah.
I was like, Dad, can you use your credit card? He's like, for what? And I'm like, well, it's this catalog online thing that sells guitars. And he's like, is it legit? You know, kind of thing. And I'm like, yes, I think so. I get their catalogs, so they must be a real store or, you know, whatever. But it's just funny how you do that. Now you just kind of click a couple buttons on Reverb or whatever your favorite website is, and it's not a big deal. But man, it's come a long ways for sure. And I appreciate your thoughts today. I think this has been a really kind of an eye-opening thing. I want to dive further into the YouTube thing as well, because we're not only, you know, having a YouTube channel, we're trying to show our products and we're trying to figure out, you know, we found that if we show, you know, the PAFs in a more popular guitar, then we get more views because the people are searching for that guitar. And so we're trying to figure out how we, you know, it's the same challenge that you're facing, is getting more stuff out but I love
and being heard above the rest of the noise. There's just like in general, there's a crazy media saturation, and our brains are, I feel like, you know, the number of screens and the number of ads and the number of apps and all that, I feel like it probably alters our brain chemistry in not the best way.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a reality to just needing to, like we were talking about, needing to run a business, get the word out, make money. I really think the biggest takeaway for me has always been, you know, no matter what game you're playing or trying to figure out the algorithm or doing this or doing that, you have to do an honest video with a love of music and gear. Like that's always been kind of my solace and sort of saving grace. And I think that's the reason why my channel is at least surviving and again growing steadily, which I'm pleased is when you go back to it, like if I'm playing a song, I'm not the best guitar player in the world and I never will be, but if I'm playing a song, I try and play it in an honest way, in a way that I feel like is going to sound good, you know, kind of to the best of my ability. And if I talk about gear, so I love gear, so my videos tend to be positive, but I don't lie about stuff, and I don't try and be like a cheesy salesman. I don't, you know, like a game changer thing. It's more like, you know, I'll certainly, there's always two sides of it because you want to be honest to the people who are watching it. But again, there's also that, like, you know, particularly, well, a builder like yourself, you know, if I'm doing a demo of your pickups and things, I'm also trying to help your business.
Right.
And, you know, luckily, like I work with companies that I know make good gear. So I don't need to, you know, I don't need to go in with like a snarky attitude and trying to pick out things that I don't like, but I'm also not going to lie and say that something is good when it's not, or something is good for something when it's not. But I think that's what it always has to come down to. You have to do it because you love gear and you love music, and hope, and just kind of let the chips fall where they will.
Yeah. It's definitely a longer road to do it that way, but I do think it's more authentic and less, you know, people know when they're being sold to. They know when it's kind of a disingenuine, you know, when every third guitar that the guy reviews is the best guitar he's ever played. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm not buying it, man. Like, it's just kind of one of those things. Well, and I appreciate you being on the show today, Jack, and looking forward to doing more of these as well. Where can people find you, whether it's links and we'll put these in the show notes too, if you guys are curious to watch Jack's channel. I do just want to recommend his style as well, as far as just reviewing stuff. It's more like you're hanging out with a guitar buddy, and it's very not, I don't want to say you're not overly producing them because you do a lot of work on them, but it's not like a TV show. It's not, you know, not like a presentation. It's like hanging out with your gear buddy and he's showing you something cool. And so I really do like your style.
That. I appreciate that. No, that's what I'm going for. You know, I wanted it, which is funny because sometimes especially if I'm doing a longer narration part, I always have to try and think like I'm talking to people, because in reality, I'm just staring into a small, cold camera lens.
Right.
but you know, you realize that when it's all put together, there's going to be people on the other end of it. So, you know, that's exactly what I'm going for. So I'm glad to hear that it translates that way. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Jack Fossett, which is JackFossett. If you just do that search, I'll come up. there's no other. I think there are like 4 other Jack Fossets, but none of them ever stuck with the YouTube thing.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah. So we'll again put the link to his YouTube channel in the show notes. Jackson, thanks so much for being on the Tonecast today. We're so excited to kind of get back into the interviews. We've had a pretty long hiatus without interviews, so you were one of the first people that I thought of.
I'm really excited to see you guys. I'm really excited to see you guys kind of hitting it hard again. I've loved your pickups for a long time and everything, and I'm thrilled. I mean, honestly, I'm thrilled just to see that you guys are still going. A lot of companies have had to hang it up over the past, 5 years. So I'm thrilled that you guys are still around and that you're kind of moving it forward too.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. It's definitely been one of those things where, kind of change your environment, change your mindset kind of thing. I don't want to get into like, guru business stuff at all, because I hate that stuff. But it's more of just trying to make some changes to get our business in the direction that we want. We've actually been kind of blowing some things up, taking dynamite to different, not literally but figuratively, dynamite to a lot of different sections of the business, and it's a longer play, and it hurts at this point to kind of move around and move on for some things. But now we're truly focused on the stuff like you mentioned in the videos, like the stuff that we're passionate about, the stuff that we care about, and ultimately that's going to be better for us, product wise, but also mentally, to keep kind of pursuing it. So I appreciate that very much, and we'll catch you on one of the future episodes. I'm looking forward to it. If you guys have questions you'd like to send us to info@porterpickups.com or topics for future shows, you can do that as well. Jack, thanks again for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.